Alert, the host has started broadcasting the meeting on Facebook.
Live. 6:37 p.m.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight is another special night. I could say it's a part 2 of our interview or meeting with Brother Tyrone Johnson. Last week was a very interesting topic. To those who watch, I appreciate your feedbacks. Now again, Brother Tyrone is back for more interesting topic. So tonight topic is bad communication, good communication. So I appreciate Brother Tyron to be back again. Looking forward to this. So Brother Tyron, you can start, please.
Thank you very much,
Hello.
Juliet. And it's a pleasure to be back with you on another interesting Monday night, a magnanimous Monday evening with Yahweh Kingdom Lifestyles youth meeting or youth panel, youth discussion, youth platform. And this program is designed or geared towards assisting young people in the opportunities that they may have to make wise choices and to learn from the mistakes that they may make and to correct some things that may happen in their lives. And so we are so pleased and privileged to be presenting this program live by way of Facebook and any other platform. In fact, if you wish to reach out to any of us, you can do it by way of this program, or you can get in touch with us personally and give us your feedback. I'm so happy that so many people who viewed the program last week shared their sentiments with Juliet. It makes us feel as if we are really making an impact in the society. So share the information, share the program, tell a friend, tell someone else to tell their friends to join us on Facebook or join us live by way of Zoom and be a part of this awesome meeting. And tonight, as Sister Juliet has indicated, we are going to be talking about communication skills. The overall topic is communication skills. And we're going to deal specifically with communication between peers, between young people, between schoolmates, between siblings, and those persons who are of the same age range, more or less, talking about teenagers. And we're going to talk about the benefits of good communication skills and the consequences that may arise from poor communication skills. As I said before, when we talk about communication skills, it's actually passing a message from one person to the next with the intent of getting a clear, concise message to the next person. And in order for that to happen, there have to be some ingredients in what you are saying or what you are doing. And so the first thing that happens during communication, whatever format you choose to communicate, whether it's verbally, whether it's literally, and that means writing or scribing or scripting, whether it has to do with an email that's technological or using the computers or whatever format you use, the cell phones or tablets. Those are electronic means by which we communicate on the computer and other devices. And of course, using a telephone or a cell phone, telecommunications. And so those are some of the ways. And in fact, television is one of the greatest resources for passing or getting messages across. It's used by the commercial world and even by governments worldwide and by news stations and other stations to get information around the world. And so it's a good platform and it works. But for young people, most of the times, a lot of young people use the social media platform or the telephone or cell phones as ways of communication. They very seldom write letters to each other like we used to do. I don't know about you, Judith, but I know I used to have a pen pal when I was much younger. and we used to send messages back and forth. And of course, when we were younger, um, we would write letters to these little girls that we like, letting them know that we are interested in them. In fact, when my dad married my mother back in 1900 long, uh, um, which is more than
Alert.
50 years
Juliet is the
ago,
host now. Alert.
um,
Yahweh's Kingdom Lifestyle Ministry has left the meeting.
he wrote a letter to the father of my mother, my grandpa, requesting to marry my mother. And that was the way they communicated back in the day, way back in the day. There was no access to telephone, there was no access to television, there was no access to email and computers, not even access to typewriters back in the day. And so they had to sit down and write letters in different ways to get the messages across of their intentions. That's what most of the young men did back in the day. Um, but nowadays we have other means of communicating, other various means of communicating that are more simpler and easier. However, the message that is sent must be a message that is understandable by the party that you're wishing to send it to. In other words, the message must be in the language that the person you're sending the message to understands. And if you're sending a message to someone in France, but they can't speak English, then you fail at communication. Because if you send a message to them in English, they would have to find a translator and have it translated into their language, so that they can understand. So one of the besides choosing a platform by which you communicate, you have to choose which in which language or how you're going to get that message to the other person, even if they speak a different language. And so the understanding must be had. If you're going to send a message that is not comprehensible, then again, like I said, you're not communicating properly. Okay, and so the message has to be in the same language that the person speaks if you're sending a verbal message. Even if you're typing it or you're sending it by email or facsimile, it has to also be in the same language that the person speaks so that the information could be clear and concise. Another thing is the person who is receiving the message must be able to comprehend the message themselves. And that means if you're going to send a message to someone who really cannot read and write properly, then it doesn't make sense you send a letter to that person. It doesn't make sense you send an email or a text message. And so you must know the person who you're sending the message to in order for the message to be understood in the proper manner. And then after the message is understood, first you have to choose what platform, what type of communication you're going to use. Then you have to choose in which language you want to send it regarding the person you're sending it to. And then the person must be able to understand the message and comprehend what you're saying to them. And they must be willing to accept the message that you're sending to them. And then finally, they must follow the instructions or respond to the message. And if that isn't done, then again, there's no determining whether the message was sent successfully. So communication still may not have happened, or good communication may not have happened. All right. And so in order for those things to be known, you must know exactly what you're saying to who, why, and when, and where, and how. You must know what you're doing, why you're doing it, when you're doing it, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. You must know what you're saying to the person and what reason you're saying it for communication to take place. Now we look at good communication skills and we look at poor communication skills. Good communication skills is actually making certain that there is nothing to harm. The message that you're sending is not designed to harm or to create a problem or to create any offense to the person that you're sending it to. All right. You must use the proper language. You must use the proper statements. You must not accuse anyone. You must not use abrasive words. You must be kind and gentle in order for the message to go through to the person you're sending it to, depending again on who you're sending it to. Now, friends in society, some of them like to be mean to each other. Pairs, boys and girls in school, they love to be mean to each other because it causes other people to laugh. It makes them feel good when other people are laughing at what they're saying. And so they say a lot of negative things to the people that they claim to be their friends. And then they hurt their feelings, and it causes disagreements. And in what we call Bahamian vernacular, it causes rows. It causes people to be offended with each other. And those offenses can cause fights, and fights can cause harm and injury to one, or even to the point of death. There are lots of indications in not only in our Bahamas but around the world where people become offended because of what you say to them, and it creates a fight. It causes people to fight, literally fight with each other, using edged tools and guns and knives and other things. Brothers and sisters, siblings who live in the same home, who dwell in the same place, sometimes come up with these offensive words that create problems for each other. And so they fight.
Alert, Juliet has left the meeting. Alert, Juliet is the host
And
now.
so they
Alert,
fight.
Juliet has joined the meeting.
And when they
Alert,
fight,
Juliet connected to audio.
they can sometimes hurt each other to the point where another person could be maimed or disabled or even, like I said, die. And there have been situations around the world where people fight for very simple things and the poor or lack of communication skills. And so, good communication skills ensure that violence and injury and harm does not come to one because of the message that you send to them. Even if you're trying to send a negative message to someone, even if you feel that the best thing to do is to hurt that person's feelings, which of course it is not, but even if that's what you decide to do and you communicate that, it could be very dangerous to each other's health. All right. And so we have to choose right or good communication skills so that we do not create problems for the other person. And even if we are bigger than the little person, even if we know, well, I got all my boys here, if I offend somebody, they'll fight for me. That isn't always true because sometimes the people that you offend don't even fight you at the time that you think they're going to fight you, and they fight you when you're by yourself, and they get you in a retaliatory manner. They may see you alone someday walking, and that's when they attack you, and that again can be very deadly. In fact, we've seen young men who were killed senselessly because they offended the other person unknowingly, or even if they knew what they were doing, they didn't realize that when they were by themselves, the retaliation would take place. And so, good and poor communication skills are very, very important. Poor communication skills can also take place when you use profanity to get a message across to someone else. And a lot of our young people are using profanity like crazy. It's a norm in society, in some parts of our society. When your mother and your father don't know how to communicate with each other, that passes down to the individual, the children, and they take that same mentality into schools and they become bullies. And so they talk to their friends just as negative as they see their parents talk to each other. And so, even as parents, we must be careful how we communicate with ourselves around our children because they're watching us and they're picking up on everything that we do as parents. They're making certain that they represent us in the best way they know how. And the way they know how is because of the things that we show them. And if we show them the negativity or the negative side of us, that's all they're going to know. And so we have to stop being negative to ourselves. And so communication skills, poor or good communication skills, um, should you should determine which ones you're going to use and for what purpose. I'm not saying that poor communication skills are good to use and you should use them from time to time. I'm not saying that. But you must know that poor communication skills can hurt someone and that you should not use them. If you have to use poor communication skills, and I'm not saying that there's any opportunity for you to do so, because if someone says something negative to you, it doesn't mean that you must say something negative back to them. If someone curses at you or uses profanity at you, doesn't necessarily mean that you must use profanity at them. All right. And so poor communication skills does not mean that you must respond poorly to people who respond to you poorly. And so we must get a handle on these communication skills because they're important for our sustenance, for our good relationships, for us to develop healthy lifestyles with each other, especially as young people. We call a lot of our friends bad names, um, like bald head, or in Bahamian vernacular, picky hair, or your black self, which of course I don't see why someone is calling you black if we're all black. There's no distinction. We're all black. Or they call you a smelly self, or they call you bad mouth odor, or stink breath, or any sorts of negative words. And sometimes they're very, very harmful to a young person who knows he or she is trying their very best, even with the meager resources. And so we have to be mindful that we got to be sensitive to the needs of others when we're thinking of how to communicate to people. We can't just go ahead and say whatever we want to say and say it however we want to say it without being concerned about the other person's feelings or what the other person might be going through. They may wake up one morning without breakfast and you go right ahead and you say something quite harmful to that person. That person is going to retaliate, maybe not right away, but they will retaliate. They're saying, you come and um, you do what you did before. See what I'll do to you. And they hold in all of that animosity and that malice and that hatred, and they can explode. And when they explode, you don't know what is going to happen. You don't know what to what extent that person would go to release that anger and that hatred. And so we got to be careful how we communicate to each other, especially as young people. We must take our times. We must be sensitive. We must care about the persons that we are communicating with. And we must seek not to harm anyone by what we say. My mother always said to me, if you can't say something nice about anyone, say nothing at all. And that is so true. If you really can't say anything nice about a person, if you can't tell them something inspirational, if you can't say anything encouraging to them, if you're going to be judgmental, if you're going to be always pointing out the negativities of young people or each other, if you're always going to jump on a person and the first thing you're going to notice is the fact that they have holes in their clothes, or that they're not well kept, or that their clothes, their school clothes are dirty, their uniforms are dirty, and maybe because they don't have running water in their home, or maybe because they live in a makeshift house, or their parents and don't have the resources that they need to take care of them, that doesn't give us the right to say these things to the young people. It doesn't give us the right to tease our friends, our peers. It doesn't give us the right to call people names. It doesn't give us the right to say how we feel about a person. And so we have to learn how to communicate properly. We must respect each other regardless to our socioeconomic background or standards. We must respect each other regardless of our economical standards, our academic standards or abilities, we must respect each other regardless to whether or not we may be disabled or able-bodied. We must respect each other, even in the face of dysfunctionality in our families. And that is something that we don't do. If one person messes up, or our mothers are leaving us, and our father comes and sows uh, some negative seeds in our heads, we go against our father or we go against our mother because of what the other parent has said. And again, that's poor communications. Whatever happens between parents or husbands and wife should never ever determine or deter a child from loving the other parent. It should never be. But because we practice poor communication skills, that is what happens. And so we must learn the difference between poor and good communication skills. We must know that our negative words can offend people to the point where they become depressed, they become withdrawn, they become anxious, and they make some deadly mistakes. So we must be mindful of these issues and seek to do the will of God who has sent us. For his word says we must work while it is day, for there cometh a time or a night when no man will be able to work. And so we must do what the Father has given us to do while we have the time to do it. We must make ourselves understand and be rational when it comes to communicating with each other. We must choose wisely what we say and when we say it, why we say it, and how we say it. We must be mindful. We must not forget. Okay? We must not forget because we all belong unto the Father. We are all his children. And as it said in the word, we
Indeed.
are known to be his disciples by our love. When we love one another, it shows that we are of the Father. It shows that he is in us and we are in him. But without that, without him in us, we will definitely display negativity and hatred and say negative things to each other. All right, Juliet, I know that was a long delivery.
Thank you
That's a
so
lot
much,
of
Pastor.
information.
It is vital and direct to the point, very specific, very true, learning in life. And it is very important that we watch out what um, really comes out in our mouth, our facial expression when we extend that information. Very true. You are very, very right. And there are many messages that have been delivered in the past and it's badly interpreted, and it was passed down from generation to generation, and it become a tradition, it become a way of life. And many times, if not more often, that we don't look back and see where is this tradition come from, or this message, or principles that came from, especially in our families. And that has been communicated that was really twisted,
Yes, yes,
if not many times it's just altered. And but because it's just not communicated properly. If at the time, probably somebody's not listening,
right, right,
because of distraction or
right,
different things.
right,
It could be a lot of influence.
yeah. We call them environmental influences that
Mhm.
distract us from paying attention. And that is prevalent in our schools. They may be sitting in a classroom, and of course, they're paying attention to what's going on around them. People walking around the schools, cars passing the schools, a bird flying, a plane passing. Maybe it may be raining, maybe thundering and lightning and what's not. And so those are distractions that causes people not to learn. And a lot of students say, well, when they're taking an exam, well, we didn't do this in class. But do you realize, or do they realize, that the same time that they were being distracted and did not hear what was being taught, that's the same time this subject may have been given and they were discussing it, but you were not paying attention. So, as far as you know, you never had it. But that is one of the reasons why a lot of our young people are failing in schools because they are not communicating wisely.
Exactly. So you mentioned about parents. There are lots of things that we mimic or pick up as a behavior towards communication, towards imparting or expressing our emotions, our if we pick up any wisdom or any anything that were imparted by our parents is
Hmm.
it's like it's adapted behavior and
Yeah.
attitude towards certain things because they are the biggest influencer in our lives since we were born, and definitely uh, it is something that parents, as me become a parent, I realize many things, how my parents communicated things in certain situations and how they manage their emotions. It is a lot of you know holding on or expressing it in anger,
Mhm.
anxiety, even sadness, and that's very true. And it's also a learned coping mechanism
Yes.
most
Yes.
of the time of some children because they make their parents are the biggest influencer, and
Yes. Yes.
it's their parents that initiate or promote freedom of speech to their children, but
Mhm.
there are some also have different parenting styles. And
Yes.
to
Of
talk
course.
about that also, um, I noticed that it's not only parents. Our
Hmm.
teachers, as you mentioned,
Yes.
also
Yes.
is
Yes. Yeah.
also the biggest
Yeah.
influence.
Yeah. The way parents parent, they're, it has a lot to do with the behaviors that our children learn as well. Like I mentioned before, not just between each other, but how they rear their children, how they grow up their children. There are in We acknowledge four parenting styles here in the Bahamas, and I think around the region, and I think even in the United States. But I'm sure we acknowledge four parenting styles here. And of course, there is the authoritative, no, sorry, the authoritarian style of parenting, where the parent is autocratic. Uh, Whatever is said, and there are no questions asked. There is no family involvement in decision making. When one parent says A, everybody has to say A, and whether they like it or not, and that's the way it is. End of story. That is a very that can be very abusive and turn out to be an abusive family environment for the children and even for the spouse, one of the spouses, because only one person will be the head. There is no discussing issues. If I say no, it's no, and regardless of what that is, regardless of what the child may be asking to do. And so the authoritarian does not give any opportunity for children to be children or to ask questions or to speak or to share their feelings. All right, they suppress the feelings of the child. All right, and that is very dangerous. And then, of course, you have the authoritative style of parenting, which does have some level of democracy, where family members are involved in the decision-making process. There are family meetings, they have family sit-down dinners, they have family outings together, and the family, whether it's a blended family, whether it's a nucleus family, whether it's a single-parent family, whatever type family it might be, they share in the decision-making process. And of course, that family functions pretty much well. The children can share their feelings. They can discuss issues with their parents. Parents assist with homework, and it's not an abrasive environment. It's not an abusive environment. And then, of course, you have the permissive style of parenting, and these parents permit their children to do absolutely anything that they want, that they desire. There may be boyfriends and girlfriends um, of children of the parents who are living there, living under the same roof. You may have people sleeping over from time to time. You may have all sorts of negative things that are happening from that environment because the parents are permissive. The parents may be on drug addicts, or maybe alcoholics, or maybe atheists or whatever, and do not have any type relationship with God, or with the Father. And so they allow their children to just do anything, go out to nightclubs, drink and smoke, and do all sorts of negative things, negative behaviors. And then, of course, you have the uninvolved parent. That's the parents who bring children into the world and allows other people to take care of their children. They pass their children off on family members or on friends or neighbors, and they have no care or concern for that child. Their comments
Alert,
are
Galaxy S5 has joined the meeting.
uh, they pass on their responsibility to other people. They do not take time to rear, to nurture, to develop the skills in their children. They do not participate in schoolwork or homework or anything of the sort. In fact, most of the times they're not even at home. Not because they're out working or busting their fingers to the bones to make ends meet, but they're out gallivanting or lollygagging, or just wasting a whole lot of time, or even having promiscuous relationships with other people. And so that uninvolved parent is actually the worst kind of parent that there could be. And those kinds of parents really do not deserve children. But unfortunately, a lot of people are still getting married, and do not know how to be parents. And so we have to choose the kind of parent Father Yahweh wants us to be. We have to choose the kind, to be the kind of parent that God expects us to be. Parents who take our children to church, not send them to church. Parents who are involved in their children's lives in school and with their friends, who know what their children are doing on social media, who can talk to their children about issues that they may see happening, regardless of what it might be. They're not afraid to discuss issues with their children. Um, and they develop a good relationship. They develop a caring, a loving, a pleasant relationship with each other. The parents are not best friends, but they are parents. They are actually showing their children how to become good parents. There's respect, there's manners, there is everything, there's care, there's concern, There's no neglect. They're taking care of their children, and they are making sure that their children are being cared for in the best way. And so that is actually the kind of parenting that we should adopt in the Bahamas and around the world. You know, it makes us better people.
Indeed, brother. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's a big topic. It's really, but mainly the key is what is the what is the mode of communication centered on. And
Yes,
it's really
yes,
true that you mentioned before that being non-judgmental, yet there are types of parenting techniques, but then our communication, the children develops their communication through us,
yes. So,
whatever
parent,
is
yes,
the immediate significant other around them. Though
yes,
our family structures are so very different now and very unique, and the most important thing is that child develop a very good and very sensible, and it's no matter how it may be that the child has to learn how to express themselves,
yes, yes,
himself positively, handle their emotion positively,
yes, yes,
and
yes,
as the Father give us free will, we have to encourage them also to express themselves
yes,
positively. Because all these things, um, no matter how a parent is authoritarian may be, we still respect as parents their freedom of speech, and
yeah,
that's how they communicate. They learn to communicate as early. It has to start at home, and so that when they grow up and uh, express their communication
right,
outside,
right,
then they have learned a positive
yes,
structure,
right,
a
that's
way
right.
of communicating their message
Yep,
properly, not very loud or not in a way that they're underheard, but very direct, commanded to be. Really,
yeah,
it's just a very good way of living. How about as our family structure is unique, as I said, parents who are living apart and they still shared, um,
yes, yes,
custody of the child, and they both inter change in responsibility.
yeah,
It's no matter how parents should be together, sometimes there's some you know events that happens that
yes, yes,
parents
yeah. One of the bad things that happens,
still
Juliet,
are
mhm, uh, I couldn't hear the last thing that you said. You were breaking up a little bit, but I think you were asking about separation
to
and parents, eh?
make a motive way.
I'm
Start or
getting,
set.
I'm not getting a good reception.
Alert, Julietta's left the meeting.
Yeah,
Alert, Julietta's the host now. Alert, Julietta's joined the meeting.
I wasn't getting you clearly just a minute ago, just a second ago, Juliet. Your voice was being distorted. Are you still with me, Juliet? Hello, Juliet.
Sorry, I got cut off
Yeah,
one time. My, my yeah, my Can you hear me now, brother?
A little clearer now. Yes, a lot clearer now.
Can you hear me now? Sorry for that.
Yes, I can.
I believe yeah, I'm just trying to make everyone turn off the other devices. It looks like there's unequal distribution. But anyway, what I'm asking is
Alert, Yahweh's
what can you
Lifestyle
advise
Ministry is the host now.
parents?
Alert, Yahweh's Kingdom Lifestyle Ministry has joined the meeting.
Okay, so it appears as if Brother
Yes, how
Bobby.
can you advise? How can you advise parents, single parents that are separated but still have joint
Yeah,
like
yeah,
responsibility and
right, right.
still have to like equal responsibility
Well,
for the child.
you
Sometimes
know,
there's the other parents stronger, the other parents is less. It's more silent, more
right,
passive.
right, right. I remember
Alert, Juliet is the host now.
I remember I mentioned a while back where uh, one parent may be sowing
Alert, Yahweh's Kingdom Lifestyle Ministry has
seeds
left
of
the meeting.
discord or contention in the child about the other parent. That should never occur, especially if there's separation or divorce, and they have a different or joint custody for the one child or for the children themselves. And then instead of sowing seeds of pleasurable seeds in the minds of our children, because we hurt so much, we want to plant negative seeds in the lives of our children. We want to say negative things about them because we feel that it hurts them. And because of what may have happened between the two parents, the other parent is seeking to hurt the other one. But they don't realize that they're doing it in front or in the presence of the children. And when they do that in the presence of the children, you're saying to the child, listen, you don't have to be well, or you don't have to do well, or your mommy is this, or your daddy is this. That should never happen when there is divorce or when there is separation with parents. Uh, Parents should realize that the children are not a part of the separation. They did not cause it, they did not bring it about. They are innocent to whatever parents may be doing between themselves. And so the child should never, or the children should never, have to feel the pinch of a divorce situation. The parents should never feel the pinch of a situation that has gone awry because of divorce or because of an extramarital affair. The children should never be held responsible for that kind of thing. All right. And so if parents are doing that, if parents are sowing seeds of discord and the contention among the parents, then the child has an inalienable right to defend themselves against that kind of behavior. Now, I'm not saying that they must divorce their parents. I'm not saying that they should fight their parents. I think at the point when they see this happening and when they realize that one parent is sowing seeds of discord on the other parent, they should refuse to believe anything that the parents are saying unless they can see it for themselves. The children should be able to choose. I'm not going to take sides. I'm going to love both my parents the same way, regardless to whether my father is a bum on the street or my mother is actually a business person doing well for themselves. And so I always talk to parents in the parenting program that we have with our Ministry of Social Services, where I discuss the topic, Fathers Make a Difference. Now, we know that there are some fathers around that do not deserve to have children because of their lack of responsibility and their lack of care for themselves. So if they don't care for themselves, they're not responsible for themselves, there's very little that parent or that father may be able to do for a child. However, even in the face of that, even in the light of that, the parent, the mother, does not have the right to belittle the father, regardless of what he's doing, regardless of what he says. And somebody may find it hard to understand. Are you saying that we must accept a drug dealer as our children's father? Should we be proud that our children's father is an alcoholic? Well, the whole thing is, and I tell them this: you slept with that individual, regardless what they were or now are. You slept with that individual. He was good enough at that point, or whatever it was that was attractive to you. You had to show it. Okay.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
yeah, some parents they really don't understand what they're doing to their children when they sow negative seeds and cause them to be against one parent, or even when they choose to be on the side of another parent. That should never take place. Children should not be forced to choose a side between parents. They should never. Each parent they should love the same.
Exactly. I really appreciate that because I mean, though situation is unavoidable, children are very smart. They're very keen observant of things going on, and parents has to try their best to raise these children in a way that they're not affected of the adults. No matter what situation they may have, and just share that because it just come to mind that it's very nowadays, though it's how tough these times may be. There are
Mhm.
really tough times that someone is unable to cope with certain situations, and
Yes. Yeah.
it's understanding the,
Yes.
the what's going on that person. It's not merely his fault or her fault. It's just the way how one copes with situation, and how they able to communicate that message they want to portray every time they send a message. And I
Yes.
do really appreciate that one. And
Yes.
we have a participant. Do you have any question? You feel free to ask question as well. Email us, send us comments, and
Yeah.
let us hear from you. Our topic is good communication, bad communication, and Brother Tyrone really um, dictate or listed a lot of different scenarios, different
Excuse
examples
me.
of bad communication, good communication, how messages must be communicated, and it's a very informative um, topic that he delivered. And there's some points when we get into that situation,
Excuse
we
me.
can adapt these measures, and it's very helpful. There are times that, as he said, that there are times to be quiet, there are times to hold back and wait for the right time, or really sometimes in an anger situation, you may need to count 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times until you mellow. Some make that
Excuse me.
me myself sometimes I need to adapt because it's easy.
Oh
It's
yeah. We
something
all have to do
you cannot return it back, right? It's a delivered communication, and it's misinterpreted, and it's just mess up the whole message, mess up relationships, and destroy trusts. And it's very vital, really. And it's every minute, every second, and really, it's just something that we need to address to ourselves first. Um, okay, our participant, can you open your mic? And it looks like she raised her hand or he raised her hand. Do you have any questions? Come on, please.
Yes, yes, but good evening to all. Very informative, discussion. And
Your volume is very low. We can hardly hear you.
all right, I said good evening to all. I said very informative, discussion.
Very
Yes.
good.
Some very good points placed on the table because this is a very realistic, the
Uh-huh.
scenarios with different family structures. Um, but one of the points I believe also that's important. It's the one of the non-verbal, communication. Like where the
Yes.
children can actually observe, because as you mentioned, sister, some children are very bright. So
Yes.
even if a parent, does not say something, they can pick up from body language and certain things as well. So most times, we look at what is said, but sometimes we neglect what is not said because these kids can be very wise. And sometimes this cause like confusions, like in the head as well. So I,
Yes.
I really believe that is also an important aspect in the communication aspect. Thank
Yes, it is. And your name, sir?
you. Oh, yes, 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 yes. That's my name is Brendan Defoe.
Brandon. How are you
Yes,
doing, man? Nice to meet you, man.
yes, yes.
Where are you located?
Dominica.
Where are you located?
Dominica.
Can
St.
you
Lucia.
raise the volume a little bit, brother?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Well, I'm on my phone. Sorry. I'm
Oh,
located
okay.
in Dominica.
Yes, we could hear you, but maybe if we can raise it up. But anyway, Brother Tyron, can you please
Yeah.
respond to that?
Yes, you mentioned a very important factor, and that is one of the forms of communication that young people use quite frequently, nonverbal communication, where um, their body language speaks what they are trying to relay to maybe parents, maybe teachers, maybe even other friends. The cutting of their eyes, the rolling of the neck, the rolling of the shoulders, the pouting, all of these, the walking away fastly, or the even the fact that they don't say anything at all of those are nonverbal communications that speaks loudly. In fact, they speak louder sometimes than verbal communication. They make, in fact, they cause teachers and other people, other professionals, to take notice of what the children are doing, and and sometimes in the schools, and I've been in the schools for many years now, and I see teachers actually taking offense and taking children to the principal because of the body language, because it speaks louder, and it says a lot. It says that I don't respect what you're saying to me. I don't want to listen to you. It says that, and I'm not caring about how you feel. And to me and to other adults, that speaks louder than saying it by words. And of course, it can, we have I've heard young people say, "Why are you looking at me?" And because a person is just staring at them, they're reading a message from that stare. And they're saying, what you want? You have a vibe with me? You want to do something? You want to fight? You want to get down? And it causes a whole lot of challenges just because someone is staring at another person. And so these nonverbal communications are very, very severe and can be just as deadly or even more deadly than the verbal communication. And so it is a very important aspect. And I tell young people, looks can't do anything to you. Someone looking at you can only mean one of two things. They either admire you or they don't like what they're seeing. And if they don't like what they're seeing, it's maybe because they don't have what you have. And so sometimes you have to just not be concerned about why a person may be staring or why a person may be looking at you in certain ways. Just continue going about your business. But our young people today, they want to confront that stare, and they want to confront the body language that they see from others. And it's the same thing with adults. They want to confront that. And so it is a very serious issue, Brandon. And I'm glad you brought it up. In fact, we would have probably got to it before we ended tonight, that is also another important aspect of communication. And I'm glad you brought it up. And so you're absolutely correct, Brandon. We must be careful the message we send with our bodies, by our eyes, our mouths, our shoulders, our heads, and even our walks, and even sometimes when we don't say anything at all. And so we must be very careful of that. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thank you, brother.
Okay.
Okay, brother, do you have another question or comment?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah,
also.
yeah. I have another comment. Sorry, but when I'm speaking in the past about like you mentioned about children picking sides, especially for divorce.
Yes,
Sometimes there is also an external factor, in terms of, let's say, like the court system, where the court
yes, yes,
will allot a child to one parent. And what you might find is sometimes kids are more attached to one parent, than the other. And
yes.
you might get the situations where the kid plays with the parent that they were not so attached with,
Hmm.
and this also can cause, a lot of messed up, I should say, can also alter and affect the children. So
Yes,
even so even the parents being mindful, so even in the communication game, should also be wise enough to share sentiment based on what is really happening and why the separation and why is it that you're with me instead of the other parent. I think that
yes,
is important as well.
yes. That is important, and I think it comes. When we talk about divorce, Brandon and Juliet, when we talk about divorce between persons who may have been married for years, 10, 15, 20 years, or even more, um, um, there is a bond that they would have developed with children, with any amount of children, for any given amount of time. And of course, they some parents are not mature enough to say to the children, well, listen,
Alert. Two people have joined the meeting.
it's my fault, or I did this, or I did that, and I may have caused the uproar. Because in divorce, most of the times, and this happens quite often. One person doesn't want to take the blame for what has happened, if it is not a totally apparent situation, where there may have been an open extramarital affair, where there may be an open addiction, drug addiction, or alcoholism, or where there's a total lack of financial responsibility. And so one parent is not going to take the full blunt of causing the divorce. And so, like that, they don't want to share with that child or those children what may have happened. They want it to be hidden because they want to maintain the relationship with that child. And sometimes that is the case. But parents ought to be mature. In fact, they ought to sit down with their children when the decision is made to to go through a divorce, and explain while each others are sitting there, while all of the children and both of the parents are sitting there, where the children can ask questions and get clarity. And if the court decides that one parent has to leave the home, then that would have been discussed prior to going to court, so that the children don't be surprised and shocked at what may happen in the court system. But again, because of the lack of wanting to be responsible, or the lack of wanting to take the responsibility for maybe creating the problem, they don't discuss it. And then, of course, they don't see eye to eye, because it may become a nasty situation during the divorce, where their parents will not see eye to eye, where the parents will not be understandable with each other. And so those are some of the reasons why children are the ones who are burnt the most out of a divorce situation. And in most cases, children are burnt the most, in most cases, especially if they're underage children. But when they're adults, it makes it easier, but they still feel the pain of losing two parents who are together. But excellent
Indeed,
point, Brandon.
brother.
Very, very excellent point, Brandon.
Very, yes. We can talk long, many hours with with that, just this topic. Because I mean, with so much things going on right now, including the pandemic, difficulties in life,
Yes, yes,
as difficult as may be, we have to keep our communication. What it says in Colossians, when it says, "Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man." So
yes,
with that, it's very important to be wise, be,
yes,
be
yes.
wise in answering every man, including
Excuse me.
children, because they are our future and they have to be um, adapt that, or be taught of how to express in
Yes,
an, as a brother Defo said, in our gestures, emotions, facial expressions, a lot of things, how you distancing with each other, can also influence uh, the imparted message, like how you distance between a couple, between friends, if you're too far or too close. Also posture,
yes, yes.
really, how do you
Excuse me.
you know a
Yes,
good posture
yeah,
delivers better
yes,
message.
very
And
much.
also, say eye contact, very
Yes,
important.
yep,
When you're looking somewhere else, then there's can be imparted as lack of interest, or
right, right.
sometimes disrespectful, right? So all
Yeah, it
those.
is. Doctor, it is.
Yes,
Yes.
brother, go ahead. Any other question from our guests?
Juliet, I think we have two other persons who joined. I think. Eh?
Sure. Yes. There's can the other person introduce himself if you have any question? Or is there any other question, Brother Default, that you need to raise up? Or
Not really.
there could be part two of this
Well,
Yeah, but
thing, I
we
believe.
can. Well, we
not really.
can. We can.
But I came in a little late, so I do not know all the topics you covered in terms of all the bases, But I do not know if you have touched on separation in terms of the communication with the kids also, even when they're separated like with the parents, and then there is the introduction of like a step parent, or
Oh yeah.
Yes.
No.
another person in the home, in terms
Yes.
Oh,
of
Brandon.
communication,
Brandon. Brandon. The initial discussion this evening was actually dealing with communication between peers, young people,
oh, okay, okay.
which could involve bullying and negative comments and other
Okay.
things that create violence between young people. But we have we did a spin-off section
Oh,
um, on divorce and separation and how that affects teens as well. But we can pick this up in our other session because this is a vast area of discussion because in fact communication could be one of the major causes for divorce in many marriages, the lack of good communication. And so that is also a spin-off from this topic that you're discussing. And then how does that affect the young people? We mentioned it before, how negative communication between parents can actually affect children in the marriage, and especially when there's divorce, like you mentioned, when a step parent comes into play. And so that is a very interesting topic. And maybe we can pick that up. And Brandon, if you could join us, because you seem to have some knowledge in that area as well. Um, would you like to join us on next week, Monday at 6 p.m., same place, same time?
Well, I will try my best. I'll try my best.
So
Very well.
also how we come up to that question as well is because there are different types of parenting styles, as the brother mentioned. There is authoritative, there's permissive. So as you know, it affects how the parents, maybe their background was, if they have
Yes.
poor education, like from Philippines, in the countryside, there is poor, as the parent is less educated, but I still saw children that respect their parents, though they're permissive kind, because they're depending on their children to be better educated. And so but then the children, as they see their parents work harder, they develop that sense of respect
Yes.
and
Yes.
Oh,
a will to do better.
oh,
That's my other take. But he touched on more authoritative, where it could really affect somebody who I've seen a lot of bullying, even the
Yes.
school parents complaints and all that. It can probably due to a certain specific parenting style and
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
giving too much
Yes.
will to the child. So
okay.
I can be very interested to touch on that topic as well, because it's
Yeah.
something that
Definitely.
really influences children
Of course,
for
Juliet.
their
Okay. Um. Okay. All right. But what I was gonna say, well, I saw. Well, okay. Well, now I know the full topic was on especially the peer pressure. All right, and that is a very good topic, by itself, because there is so much
yeah.
also in the peer pressure as to
Yes.
understanding the mind, like of the child, because sometimes the child, even if the child is trained the best, because it's trained in the home, you have to wonder what makes that child tick, and how does that child like process like information,
Yeah.
because
Right.
it also deals with esteem, whether low or high self-esteem, especially
Right.
when it
Right.
comes to peer
Yes.
pressure and bullying. And that
Yeah.
is why a technique I was taught and I passed it on to my son is always try to be a leader and not a follower,
Right.
especially for
Right.
things that people will try to influence you to do. So I know I missed a lot of the stats, so I just contributed. So thanks so far. Thank you.
Well, excellent.
I agree with you, brother Default.
Yes.
uh, I just gonna make a quick comment about that. I agree with him, because I the other week, as I was having a children parent meeting with my children, I said, um, as I was trained differently, I see that the children has to be trained leaders. I told them, you are not. Um, I turned I key in the term slaves. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that, we are, as much as sometimes we train to be pleasers, but
Mm-hmm.
pleasers of others, no matter how like we do many things, but then there's a negative effect of pleasing others, one way or the other.
Yeah.
And you have to be leaders, you have to initiate a good practice, a good habit, and you don't wait for others. In the manner that I say that, you don't wait for instruction.
Yes.
You wait for instruction, a sound instruction, but when you see things that you need to do and expected to do, don't wait that to be reminded of it. And
Yes.
that's my take of saying that. But is there any final words that you need to impart tonight, Brother Tyrone?
Well,
And
I let me just say how pleased we are to have Brandon. That's your name, Brandon, right? Brandon, join us tonight, and I hope that he would consent to join us in future when we further this topic on communication, because we just touched the surface. We have not really opened it up to the full extent that it could be opened. And so we are just touching the surface. And so there are going to be other opportunities next week to talk about the same communication from a different angle. And then the other two persons who joined, it is my prayer that you were truly blessed by what you heard tonight and would seek to join us again on next week, Monday at 6 p.m. We had a bit of a challenge starting on time this evening, but we are clear those butterflies. And next week, Monday, we will make certain to do our best to try promptly to start promptly at 6 o'clock. Juliet, it's good to have you back again and to be the host of this program. I'm so pleased to have joined up with you and Brother Bradley all the way from the Bahamas to be a part of this awesome program. And so we look forward to next week, Monday, where we will do it again. And we will make a difference in the lives of young people as far as Father God, Father Yahweh would have us to do. And so I'd say good night to everyone until we meet again. The blessings of the Lord be upon all of us.
thank you, Brother Tyrone, and blessings to you as well. May the Father increase you and use you in a way we wanted to be, to speak to our young ones, our youngsters, to develop and impart something very important, the way they should go. So
Yes.
we are that,
Yes.
as we are parents, we are adults, we are in tune of these things. Let's look forward to more discussion about these things, because it's not often that it's being discussed, it's not being imparted. So I really appreciate this time with you, and I try my
I
best
do.
to be on the platform again next time, and
Definitely.
open up to more possibilities and more opportunities. So thank you,
Definitely.
participants. Thank you, our people, and appreciate it. Appreciate the time. So blessings to everyone. Thank
Blessings.
you,
Yes,
and
thank
have a
you.
good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.